Hi everyone. Today we are in conversation with Sarat Raju. He works at Big Basket as a chief architect, and then he previously worked at Amazon as a principal engineer in multiple domains. Over to you, sir, and thank you very much for doing this.
Hey, thanks for having me over. My pleasure. So yeah, I think thanks for the intro. So I've been with Big Basket, joined them fairly recently, about I think 8 months ago. Prior to that, worked in a startup called Rupeek. It's in the fintech domain.
Okay.
Again, similar architect role over there. And I was in Amazon for close to 10 years, worked in multiple domains there, customer returns, payments, supply chain optimization technologies. So those were some of the areas I focused in Amazon. And prior to that, I worked in a bunch of other places. So I've seen like grown with along with the internet, right from the dial-up days. That's when I first started writing code. To
I just had a niggle of asking you this. So when I return my any package on Amazon, does your code handles all these things or?
I'm pretty sure code that I've written does some part of the
Okay,
process.
cool, cool, cool.
Unless something changed in the last 3-4 years.
Cool,
Yeah.
cool. Thank question is about your organization. How it, I mean, I think I got the gist of how Amazon handles all these things. But
Mm,
if you can give me a peek into the processes in Big Basket, because now you have, I think, 10 or 10, almost 10 months in Big Basket, and you worked in Amazon. How these
sure.
things are handled? Because from scratch till the end, because both Big Basket and Amazon, the handles, I mean, even a microsecond delay in getting the order, processing everything, can make
Mm,
a full difference in the cart conversion, basically. So
sure.
how do you deal with all these processes, and how do you design all these things since scratch?
Mm. So I mean, just like
Not very
nitpicking.
detailed, I mean, a very rough answer.
Yeah. I think see,
And probably if you can focus more on the DevOps side, because
yeah,
I'm a DevOps engineer, so I'll be kind of.
absolutely sure. So I'll just sort of step out a little and give some context, and that will help you understand the like what the DevOps team does a little better. Is like I think as a company, Big Basket is primarily customer obsessed,
Mhm,
right? And sort of the core thing that we chase is how do we build a service
mhm,
that is truly value add for that customer, right? How like something that you won't get from anywhere else,
mhm,
and it is truly value for your time, money to come and use our platform to meet your shopping or any other need in the future. So
mhm,
that's like a very like high level mindset, and
mhm.
with that being the primary focus, what that also means that we are not necessarily a tech driven company as some companies like to call themselves, right? We are
Okay.
customer driven, not tech driven. We are not valuation driven. So there like
Mhm,
the bunch of other like metrics that companies chase. I think as a company, what I've learned is that they are not the primary focus at Big Basket. Now,
mhm,
what that translates to is that now customers have changing requirements with time,
mhm,
right? Like what customers wanted from their grocery shopping experience,
mhm.
uh, say 3 years ago, is very different from what they want now. And
Keep
there are
on.
multiple reasons that have shaped that change in behaviors. And without even getting into that, so what kind of products do they want? What speed at which they want them delivered to them?
Mhm,
What kind of discounts do they want? So all these are something that keep changing.
mhm,
Now, so the core for Big Basket as a technology organization is not to build to meet a requirement, but
mhm.
to build a platform that can easily evolve to meet changing requirements, right?
Okay.
So with that, the platform mindset becomes very important.
Okay.
That it's not how many features I support today, but whatever I have built today, how easy is it to build 10 new features on top of it
Mhm,
3 months down the line, down the line, even though I don't know what those 10 features are right away, right? If I have even a general vague idea that I will try to explore three new ways of shipping products to a customer. Now,
Mhm.
so then, okay, what is the flexibility I need to build in my software to,
Mhm.
address? So that's how the engineering team looks at the problem. The second problem is that we want to grow, and
Mhm.
if you look at quick commerce, e-commerce, and all of this, out of total India's population, there's only a small segment that is using it today, right?
Exactly. There is a
Like
huge scope.
right, in terms of addressable market, right? So there is a lot of growth that will continue to happen
Mhm.
from today till the to, next year, the year after, 5 years after. So
Mhm.
whatever we build needs to be able to handle that growth in terms of scale, in terms of increased in interaction. So these are two dimensions: flexibility and scale. And then the third thing is we need to provide value to the customer. You cannot overcharge customers, right? So to provide value, you need to do things optimally.
Okay.
And when we say optimally, part of it is like, say, how do you reduce the cost of bringing your vegetables to your doorstep, like the transportation cost or whatever. But
The
then
whole supply chain
cost,
sort of.
yeah, but the cost of running your tech infrastructure, that's also
Mhm.
not negligible. So that also needs to be brought down. The size of your engineering team is a cost that eventually your customer bears, right?
Mhm.
So that has to be optimal. So there is a need for frugality that is again very strong in the DNA of the organization. So
Okay.
when I combine these three, flexibility, scale, and frugality, provide like three very strong constraints
Mhm.
within which the DevOps teams have to operate,
Okay.
right? So no one is going to give the DevOps team, this is my final requirement. You
Mhm.
build this, and I won't disturb you for the next 3 years.
Okay.
Because
Okay.
we are like the application team itself doesn't know what will they'll be asked to do in like
Mhm.
in 3 months down the line. So whatever the DevOps team is building, let's say the DevOps team is building a CI/CD infrastructure,
Mhm.
they have to assume that newer languages will come, newer data sources will come, newer ways of development SDLC will come,
It
and
has to be very
the
flexible.
pipelines or the template should be flexible enough that new
Mhm.
flavors can be created with a minimum time. So like flexibility can impact the DevOps output in that example dimension.
Mhm.
The second thing is scale, right? As you're scaling,
Mhm.
the choices of your like components, right? So maybe initially you use Kubernetes and HPA for auto scaling, but if you're at certain point, HPA might not be responsive enough
Yes.
to handle sudden spikes in traffic or sudden changes in traffic
Event
patterns.
driven
Right?
scaling unit.
So then you might have to invest further either in event-driven scalers. You might have to even build mechanisms or think about what to do when your systems get more scale than they cannot handle. On one
As
hand,
you
you have to scale, but scaling is not infinite, right? That you run into other practical resource problems, right? So when
just
that
like.
happens and your system is still getting bombarded with more traffic because there's
Mhm.
an IPL event or some campaign going on or whatever, right? Like how do you gracefully degrade it to the customer? Can
Mhm.
you turn off half the features that are less used and allow a bare bones shopping experience to continue, right? So
Oh.
like all of this requires deep DevOps thinking, deep platform thinking, to come in, new layers of tools to come in. And then finally we talked about scale, we talked about uh, flexibility, then cost. Now,
Yep.
all these things has to be done at a lower cost. So even if you're not evolving anything, right, then
Mhm.
the question is if the same thing cost
Mhm.
me X dollars per order or
Mhm.
X spice per order
Mhm.
last year, how can I
Mhm.
make 0.8x by
Mhm.
say order next year, right? So then look for areas to optimize. Am I overspending in compute? Is there a new JVM that reduces my,
Mhm.
compute? Can we go to a new instance type? So like there's like different kinds of like the organizational goals and organizational mindset
Mhm.
translates into specific DevOps goals and like specific outcomes that the DevOps team has to chase.
And I think
And
DevOps team has to align their goals and the initiative along with the organization goal. It is not
Absolutely.
that organization going in X direction and DevOps is going in by direction.
Yeah. I think that doesn't happen. Luckily, I think we have some very strong DevOps leaders who are part of the core decision making in the engineering team, and so they're pretty much tuned with what the engineering team is expected to do, what the organization as a whole is trying to do, and we
Yes,
try to create the DevOps roadmap that is aligned with it, and then of course constantly tinkering and changing. I think that is again part of our DNA. As long as you're flexible, it's okay to make mistakes, right? You can
exactly.
choose the wrong technology, go down the wrong path, but
Mm.
you measure quickly, know that you're
You can
to
always revert,
then
basically.
come back. Yeah.
All these areas basically, I mean, if I'm able to understand correctly, I mean, translate to
Mm.
very good things. One is, I think, uh, big basket or the organization is heavily focused on the robustness of their core platform, where you
Mm.
can experiment, deliver, or maybe revert, basically.
Yep.
So is it
Yep.
platform engineering, or kind of the core platform you have built is
Mm.
flexible enough or scalable enough that you can handle all these things? And another thing is that, as you talked about the customer interest and all these things, do you think the larger chunk come from the data ops, or basically doing so much calculations according to the data pattern and all those things? Are these two are the focus areas, platform engineering and data ops?
I mean, platform engineering definitely is a focus area.
Mhm,
When I say platform engineering, it's both the application layer that I'm talking
mhm,
about, like
mhm,
what are the primitive microservices that you can build in a
mhm,
configurable way that
mhm,
I can meet both current and future requirement. Like to give an example, you need
mhm.
an address service, you need a customer identity service. So
Exactly.
tomorrow I might launch 15 types of apps and products and services, but
Mhm.
and they all share the same address book, right? So
Yes.
there is those kind of platform components, and then
Mhm,
there is of course the core platform like my database layer, my
mhm,
scalable compute layer, right?
mhm,
In both of these, the idea is to build something that scales, and that
mhm,
is, I think, the key for the platform team is to make it self-service. Launching, making a change, retiring.
mhm.
None of these three should come to the platform team,
Okay.
right? Like as long as you build it as self-service,
Mhm,
innovation will happen on its own, and
mhm,
then the platform team comes into play when
mhm,
the current platform is not sufficient. I have this high throughput requirement that this database flavor is no longer supporting,
mhm,
right? Or it's becoming very unstable. Then the platform team will come, okay, how can we help you? Maybe the application team will have a suggestion. Let's start
mhm,
using XYZ database. Then how do we think about it? How do we do auto scaling? How do we do observability for it? How do we create multiple instances of it for lower environments and production? So all of those things the platform team will sort of come in, set it up for that database technology or flavor once, and then the
mhm.
next time another team needs that same database technology, they start using it. So that's how we do. And
They
again,
follow
if let's say there's only one team in entire big basket that is
the. Mhm,
using OpenSearch, for example,
mhm,
the platform team doesn't get involved. It does. There's no hard rule that
mhm,
everything should be managed by platform team,
mhm.
because then it becomes a bottleneck. So
It,
only
it
thing
becomes
is,
important actually.
yeah. So if something is used by multiple teams and it can benefit by a centrally managed, you know, oversight or tooling or whatever, then the platform team gets involved. Otherwise, use whatever the cloud services provide and innovate.
Okay. Cool. Cool. That is, I mean, I think very elaborate answer for that. And doing all these things, basically being customer obsessed or customer centric or tech centric and all. I think it takes a lot on the engineering side, basically. And uh, if the processes or the tooling or the platform engineering is not good enough, it kind of frustrates the engineers, and then
Mm.
it results in so many ways, basically poor
True.
deliveries and things. So there is a huge wave around this dev productivity going on.
Mm.
How it is handled at Big Basket, and what are your
Yeah,
goals?
I
Or
find that sort of very interesting question
Mhm,
because, like, if I ask you to define dev productivity
mhm,
and I ask three people the same question, I'm sure all three people will give three different answers, right?
exactly.
Okay, if I'm a business stakeholder,
Mhm,
dev productivity is like how much impact did technology give
mhm,
on my cash flow or number of customers I've acquired or some business metric like that. If you talk to I don't know, if you talk to engineer, he might say lines of code or features developed, right? So when when you're unable to define a metric that everyone aligns with,
mhm.
it becomes a very hard metric to optimize for.
Okay.
So we don't necessarily chase dev productivity as a metric. And also funnily, right, like because like I'm trying to see what is the equivalent of dev productivity
Mhm,
for a non-tech team, right? So let's say you are a marketing and engagement team. Do you measure creativity as a metric and say how do we make you more creative, right?
mhm,
Or can you go to a business team and say how do we improve the business acumen from your team? It's those are like you can only see the output of it, but you cannot optimize it. So rather than dev productivity, the way
mhm,
we look at it is at a given point of time,
mhm,
you are aware of certain conditions in your engineering org
mhm.
which are suboptimal.
Okay.
It could be, it could be just making this up that the time to from a product is thought about or a
Mhm.
feature is thought about to launch,
Lead time, basically.
right? That end-to-end elapsed time or lead time. Let us
Mhm.
say that there is a perception that it's too long.
Okay.
Then we can take that and say how do we crunch it. So now dev productivity could be one aspect of it,
Mhm,
but it could also be because teams are spending too much time trying to understand requirements. It could be because we don't have good data to make our decisions on. Maybe the tech stack is unstable. Maybe there's too much of coordination happening because teams are not rightly divided with responsibilities. So there could be so many reasons that are impacting your elapsed time, right? So what we do is like try to optimize for very well measurable outcomes like this.
okay.
And so for every project, you can measure the elapsed time. And even though
Mhm,
no projects are exactly the same, you can develop a gut feel that, okay, is this right? Or do you think that we could have done this lesser? And if everyone agrees, rightly, yeah, perhaps there is an opportunity to optimize it. We could have
mhm,
done this in half the time if we were structured differently or if we had better tools or whatever. Then we can start, chasing that as a goal. Other such metrics could be quality metrics, right?
mhm.
Like dev productivity means little if the output is of low quality, right?
Exactly. And
So
basically,
you
but
could
the thing,
measure, yeah, you
sorry
could
to
measure,
interrupt. I think,
you
yeah.
could measure things like how many defects did I get in my QA phase of my
Mhm,
product, and then take goals to reduce them, right? So when you take metrics like this, then what you do is you go through a cycle of I will measure,
mhm,
then I will attribute.
mhm.
Okay, my elapsed time took me 3 months. Out
Okay.
of this, let us say development took me 1 month.
Mhm,
Now you do a deep dive. You sit with the developers who built the code. Hey, you only made 6 lines of change in your service. Why did you take 3 days to do it?
exactly.
Then that
That's
person,
their
you know
product.
what? It's only 3 lines, but it took me half a day to set up the environment and the half day to create test data. And then when I tried to test it, the beta environment was down. Then I filed a DevOps ticket. Then they asked me to do this and that. Then you find actual actionable problems and do
Exactly.
this repeatedly, project after project, and don't just chase every first problem that you see.
Mhm,
Collect them, aggregate them, and then you find the hot spots where multiple teams are getting bottlenecked, and then you
mhm.
start defining
Fine.
products, chasing, and then
Hmm.
repeat as a cycle, like infinitely. And what I find is a lot of true innovation happens there. Yeah, like innovation is not sitting in a cafe and getting a new idea. Innovation happens when you, like, deep dive with teams, look at data, try and understand why things are working the way they are working, and then challenge yourself. Like, always ask yourself the question: if something took one day, why could it not be done in 2 hours? It might
Yeah.
sound like a very absurd question
Aggressive.
to start with, but
Hmm.
when you ask that question three times, then you'll be like, yeah, why can't I do it in 2 hours? And then you'll see, okay, this doesn't seem right. Like, so that's how the process works.
Exactly. I think we see all of these, as you mentioned, the lapse time and continuously iterating over that. But I think lately what's happening, since the dev productivity word has been, I mean, the phrase has been making rounds in the engineering circles. So basically, lot of this lift and shift is happening. That okay, let's have this tool implement this that will increase the dev productivity. Let's create this process, and then it will kind of reduce the lead time and increase the data productivity, so they don't have to spend this much time on n number of things basically. So do you think all these things, I mean, I mean, after listening to your answer, I don't think so this is the strategy, but do you think it's a good approach to have lift and shape
I'll tell you
implemented?
the approach we are taking. I'll tell you the approach we are taking. I think
Mhm.
it's sort of two pronged.
Okay.
One is shift left.
Hmm.
Again, it's not something we've invented. Entire industry is doing it.
Yeah, yeah, shift
So
left is there.
whether it is quality, performance testing, security testing,
Mhm.
vulnerability identification, experimentation, everything. How do we like shift it left in the development SDLC pipeline, so
Mhm.
that because the cost of finding these issues further down the production pipeline is much higher, right?
Okay.
A bug that one line code change, a bug that requires a one line code change, after it reaches production, will require a total of X man hours. Whereas if
Mhm.
the same bug got caught the moment the developer wrote the bug and committed it, or even
Mhm.
before committed, when he just did the build and test on his or her local workspace, right?
Mhm.
Then it takes infinitely lesser time, right? So how do you shift left your costly aspects of SDLC? I think that
Mhm.
is the Uber mindset. And like, to me, from my experience, right, and what I've seen teams do, teams lose a lot of time in, especially in a microservices based development world,
Mhm.
teams lose a lot of time in finding the right environment to test their code.
Okay.
The code changes itself are small, but
Mhm.
having a stable environment which mimics production,
Mhm.
where they can put their new code in and test it against the various use cases,
Mhm.
that is where time is lost. And that is one of our bigger focus areas right now.
Mhm.
How can we increase the coverage of testing you can do from your workspace, from your, like, uh, laptop itself? How
Mhm.
much can you do in a QA environment? And to do that, now for example, you can say that a production database is different, QA database is different, production configuration is different, QA configuration is different. So then what we try to do is, can we create some kind of automation
Mhm.
that mimics the production data
Mhm.
without literally copying it, but mimics the variations in production data in QA itself,
Near production basically the
near
replica.
production data. So like those are kind of tools that we are investing in
Mhm.
to sort of do this. And then automation always is great, right? Like if you have like a tool that will run post your commit, and just tells you that, okay, these are your security vulnerabilities, just go and fix them, right? Or so we are definitely trying to invest in those areas. Nothing against them. I'm not saying I'm anti tools or anything, but yeah. So, and now, like, this new area of LLMs, and they
AI in
have
the whole life cycle basically.
promise of improving developer productivity by like a almost an entire factor of magnitude, right? So we are experimenting. We are also trying out various tools. We are trying out Visual Studio Code, asking encouraging SDs to, like, use, GitHub Copilot and see if they are able to get benefits. So so that as an organization we develop the muzzle of using all these AI assistants in our journey,
Hmm.
so that when they actually become good, as of
Hmm.
today they are
They are
providing
close.
marginal value,
Yeah,
but when they actually become really good, then we are in a position to completely,
kind of handle that.
leverage their benefits.
Exactly. I think that all those answers has been really elaborately answered, and I think that satisfies me. I mean, whatever I was looking for from you. Sorry to say that, but exactly that was my agenda, to get as much as I can. So basically, I can just post it, and I mean, if it can help even a single person, that will be really helpful. And thank you very much for answering. Do you have any closing thoughts or anything? I mean, to the engineers there.
Yeah, I think the engineers in any organizations, right? Like,
Mhm.
what they are force multipliers, right? I mean, technology is a force multiplier, right?
Mhm.
It can take you from X to 10x in your own words, right? And
Mhm.
10x to 100x. Tech is one of the things that can help a organization,
Mhm.
grow in that sort of multiples.
Mhm.
So I think engineers should value their time individually so much, and
Mhm.
constantly look for how do I provide maximum leverage to my organization. And when every engineer is thinking on those lines,
Mhm.
then they are automatically seeing stuff that is not value add, like repeated, like, automatable, or
Mhm.
tasks that can be simplified, tasks that can be eliminated,
Mhm.
tasks that can be replaced by, like, a SaaS tool or a third party tool. So I think, like, it's every engineer needs to look at, if I'm doing something and that is not going to help my organization grow 10x,
Mhm.
right? And 10x not necessarily just scale or revenue, right? Like,
Mhm.
10x in terms of better user experience, or whatever your focus of your
Agree.
organization is. So, but if you constantly look, okay, what can I do to create that order of magnitude difference? And if you're doing something that's not doing that, then
Mhm.
really challenge yourself. What can I do to eliminate that, so that I can focus on big leverage items? I think that's how I look at, like, my own role in career, and encourage all engineers to, look at their respective domains of work as well.
Cool, cool. Thank you very much, sir. I think again that will add so much value to the whosoever is listening to this, basically. So thank you very much for doing this.